For 50 years, three companies controlled the video camera market: Sony, Canon, Panasonic. Combined, they had hundreds of billions in revenue, decades of optical engineering, and the most loyal customers in consumer electronics. Then a drone company took it from them. Not gradually, not by competing on specs, by making a camera so easy to use, so easy to carry, so impossible to put down, that Sony, Canon, and Panasonic are still trying to figure out what happened. And this week, that drone company just announced the next one. Before everyone starts talking about the Pocket 4, let's talk about something more interesting. How did this actually happen? How does a company best known for drones walk into one of the most competitive hardware markets in the world and win? Because the answer isn't better technology. It isn't a bigger sensor or a smoother gimbal. It's something every company in that market had access to, and every single one of them missed it. By 2010, the camera industry was at its peak. Over 120 million cameras shipped in a single year. Then the smartphone arrived. By 2023, that number had fallen 94%. An entire product category, the compact point and shoot, essentially gone, replaced by something already in everyone's pocket. Sony, Canon, and Panasonic adapted. They moved up market. Professional cameras, mirrorless systems, high-end gear for serious photographers. But in doing so, they left a gap. Everyday people still wanted to capture video, better than a phone, without the complexity of a professional camera, without the bulk, without the learning curve. Nobody built that product. DJI did. In 2018, they launched the first Osmo Pocket. In 2020, a second version. Both sold. Neither set the world on fire. Then in October 2023, the Osmo Pocket 3. And something shifted. To understand how DJI took the video camera market, you have to go back to 2006. Frank Wang founded DJI as a student, building flight control systems from his dorm room. The early product was technical, expensive, aimed at engineers and hobbyists who knew what they were doing. By 2010, DJI faced a choice: stay focused on institutional and professional clients, a reliable, smaller market, or go consumer, make drones accessible to ordinary people. Wang chose consumer. It was not the obvious call. Consumer hardware is brutal, margins are thin, expectations are high, and you're competing with companies who have decades of manufacturing scale behind them. But Wang had a specific philosophy. He believed that making something easy to use, genuinely easy, not just marketed as easy, was itself a technology problem. One DJI was better positioned to solve than anyone else. The result was the Phantom. Launched in 2013, ready to fly out of the box. No assembly required, no engineering degree needed. It created an entirely new market. And it gave DJI something the traditional camera companies never had: 5 years of experience building hardware for people who just want to point and shoot. When DJI turned that experience toward a handheld camera, Sony and Canon didn't even see it coming. This isn't the first time a company has made that bet. In 1979, Sony was already a respected electronics brand. Professional audio equipment, high-end televisions, serious gear for serious people. Then one of its co-founders, Masaru Ibuka, had a simple request. He wanted to listen to music on long flights. The company's portable recorder was too big and too heavy. Could someone make it smaller? The engineers were not enthusiastic. The device they built couldn't record, only play back. Conventional wisdom said no one would pay for a cassette player that couldn't record. Sony's own marketing team called the idea ludicrous. The board of directors had to be convinced it was worth making. Sony launched the Walkman in July 1979. Within 2 months, the first production run of 30,000 units had sold out. By the time Sony stopped selling cassette Walkmans in 2010, 31 years later, the product had sold 400 million units. The Walkman wasn't a technology breakthrough. Cassette players already existed. Headphones already existed. What Sony did was combine them for a use case that nobody had designed for. Personal, portable audio, out in the world, on your own terms. Sound familiar? DJI didn't invent the camera. They didn't invent the gimbal. They combined them for a use case the camera industry had stopped caring about. The second decision was quieter, less obvious, and arguably more important. By 2013, consumer drones were beginning to sell. But every serious filmmaker still had a problem: shaky footage. The moment you moved a camera, walked with it, ran with it, mounted it on anything that vibrated, the image became unusable. The solution was a gimbal, a motorized stabilization mount that keeps a camera perfectly level, regardless of how the body holding it moves. The technology existed. It had existed in professional film production for decades, but it was expensive, heavy, complicated to calibrate. A professional 3-axis gimbal cost thousands of dollars and required dedicated training to operate. DJI built one for $80, not by cutting corners, by solving the engineering problem at the component level, integrating the motors, sensors, and control software into a single unit small enough to hold in your hand. When DJI released the Osmo in 2015, it didn't just sell a product. It eliminated an entire industry's pain point. Anyone could now shoot stable video. No training, no crew, no budget. Sony and Canon both made cameras. Neither made the gimbal standard. DJI did. And once you control the stabilization layer, you control what camera goes on top of it. This playbook has a name, and it was written 40 years ago. In 1968, Gordon Moore and Robert Noyce founded Intel. The company made memory chips. Reliable business, steady customers, nothing revolutionary. Then IBM came calling. In 1980, IBM was building its first personal computer. It needed a processor. Intel had one, the 8088. IBM chose it, largely because it was available and good enough. Intel didn't just win a contract, it won a platform. Because IBM's decision meant every software developer now wrote code for Intel architecture. Every PC clone that followed, and there were millions, needed an Intel-compatible chip to run that software. IBM thought it was buying a component. Intel understood it was selling a standard. By the 1990s, Intel supplied over 80% of the processors in the world's personal computers. Competitors existed. None could unseat them. The ecosystem had already been built around Intel's architecture. The lesson wasn't about making the best chip. It was about becoming the layer everything else depended on. DJI read that lesson. They didn't try to beat Sony at optics. They became the stabilization layer, the component every serious video creator now builds around. Sound familiar? Here's the pattern. Every decade or so, a market gets redefined, not by the company with the best product in the existing category, by the company that solves the hardest problem underneath it. IBM didn't lose to a better mainframe. It lost to a company that made the mainframe irrelevant. Sony didn't lose the Walkman market to a better cassette player. It lost to a device that made the cassette irrelevant. And Sony, Canon, and Panasonic didn't lose the compact camera market to a better compact camera. They lost to a company that made camera complexity irrelevant. DJI's two decisions follow the same logic. First, Go consumer before the market exists. Second, own the layer nobody else bothered to solve. That's not luck. That's a repeatable playbook. The Pocket 3 didn't just sell well. It created a new category of creator. People who would never buy a mirrorless camera. People who found smartphones limiting, but DSLRs intimidating. DJI built the product for the gap between those two things. Sony doesn't make it. Canon doesn't make it. Nobody else is even trying. And that's exactly where DJI wants to be. The Pocket 4 hasn't launched yet, but the pattern tells you everything you need to know. DJI won't compete on specs. They never have. They'll find the next layer nobody else is solving, and they'll own it before anyone else realizes it matters. That's the move every dominant company in history has made. Intel owned the processor. Sony owned personal audio. DJI owned stabilization. The question worth asking isn't whether Pocket 4 will sell. It's what problem it quietly solves that no one else is even thinking about. Because that's how markets actually change. Not with a better version of what already exists. With something that makes the old question irrelevant. DJI has done it twice. There's no reason to think they're finished.